Hey y'all, I'm Pia Agarwal, Curator for Performing Arts at the Momentary. I'm excited to introduce you to our first virtual resident artists, Nick Vaughan and Jake Margolin. Nick and Jake will be in residency with us from April 27th through May 4th, further developing their Arkansas-centered project, The Ballads of Jesse. Nick Vaughan and Jake Margolin are Houston-based interdisciplinary artists. Their 50 States project, a series of 50 installations that connect instances of queer life from each state's pre-Stonewall history to contemporary regional queer experiences, will be completed over the next 4 decades. This multi-decade endeavor draws from recent groundbreaking academic work, the artist's own archival research, and significant time spent learning from and collaborating with local queer communities and community members. In this video, Nick and Jake will be introducing their 50 States Arkansas project, The Ballads of Jesse, in advance of further developing the work through a series of virtual meetings and workshops over the course of the week. Please join us live at 6 p.m. Central on Monday, May 4th, for a conversation with the artists and one of their collaborators, New Orleans-based composer Free For All. Details on how to tune in can be found in the captions of this video or on our website at themomentary.org. Thanks for watching.
Hello, I'm Jake Margolin.
And I'm Nick Vaughan.
And this week we are developing a performance event, theatrical something, in a virtual residency at the Momentary called The Ballads of Jesse, 50 States, Arkansas.
And this is a new experience for us, introducing ourselves and our work virtually in a pre-recorded talk presentation. If you go to our website and look at what we make, you'd probably see us as visual artists. And we are, but we also tend to give a lot of talks that we typically think of as performances. We usually call them performance lectures. Our backgrounds are in theater. It's what we both went to school for. It's where our professional careers were until about 6 years ago.
As a side note, is it too early for a side note? I mean, do we have to establish a route before we diverge from it? Whatever. This is all uncharted territory, so let's begin by diverging. A side note. The first time that we put up an installation in an art gallery, it included the piece that became the seed for our life's work, the 50 States Project. It's a series of 50 installations made in response to little-known, really old queer histories from each state. And anyway, this French artist named Prune Nouri, who we are rather fond of, came to see the show, and the first thing that she said after seeing it was, "Oh, it's so obvious that you're theater people." And we were crushed. We felt like we'd been found out in our fraudulent attempt to sneak in the back door of the visual arts world. And she said, No. What I mean is that it's clear that what you care about above everything else is narrative. There is narrative everywhere. The layout, the way you move through the space, the content.
There's also the liveness of theater. And I think we try to bring that liveness into most aspects of our work. Each of the projects that we've completed thus far in our 50 States project has, in some way, been live, or been the capture of a live event. Whether as video document, like our Colorado piece, or a record in wax of our travels, like our Wyoming piece, or like our Texas piece of reprinting of an 1895 novel with perhaps the first lesbian heroine in American fiction, printed in stenciled, unfixed graphite powder that slowly degrades over the course of the installation, obliterated by breezes, errant viewers' fingers, insects.
And of course, our performance lectures are quite live, the present one excluded. And usually they include other performers who are very much live, and sometimes they include ghosts and memories who aren't exactly live, whom we try to conjure, if only fleetingly.
So what to do in a world where audiences cannot gather? Where to love other human beings means to close ourselves off from them physically. We could do this as a Zoom conference, and we will have a work in progress showing at the end of the week like that, which we hope you will join us for. But a Zoom conference requires y'all to be here at the same time as us, and for this introduction, it feels like we should take advantage of the great perk of the virtual, that you, the audience, can tune in whenever you want. But how to make this live?
2. Okay, let's step back for a sec. We are a married couple based in Houston, but we're in Brooklyn, New York at the moment because our best friend had a child for us, and we're here to all be close together for the first year or so of his life. His name is Whit. We named him after Walt Whitman. And one of Whit's favorite things to do in these quarantine days is to sit in the window of our 4th-floor apartment and look out at the street and the passers-by and the cars and the trucks and the bus, and these days the many ambulances.
And we thought, what if we perform this introduction live out of our window? For the guy who lives across the street and types at his computer all day, now that we're in lockdown, or for the lady walking into the pizza parlor on the way home from her essential job in some way on the front lines of this. Which got us thinking about windows.
There are some windows that feature prominently in this piece that we're going to be making at the Momentary. These train car windows, from a luxury train car converted into a residence for the heroes of this history. The windows that looked in on the private lives of this gay, interracial couple who lived in the number 99 of the Missouri and North Arkansas Railroad in Harrison, Arkansas in the 1920s. You'll have to tune back in on the evening of the 4th to hear fully how we might use these windows, but there were 18 of them on each side of the car. So for this introductory video, we thought we'd perform 18 glimpses into our work and into what we're going to be doing here in virtual Bentonville.
We've already done 2 of them. Here's the 3rd.
Oh, another side note. We can talk about these stories for hours upon hours, which is to say that we're going to try to be pretty brief. I'm sure that we'll put up a link or something below if you want to poke around our website and dig into any of this more.
Right. The 3rd window.
Window 3. This is a glimpse into the last 50 States installation that we finished, Louisiana. It deals with an 18th century ship captain, the cabin boy that he had an affair with, the first commercial shipment of indigo pigment from colonial Louisiana back to France, which was being captained by the aforementioned captain, and the shipwreck that left that shipment on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. And it connects all of that to a series of gay Mardi Gras masquerade balls held at African American longshoremen's union halls in New Orleans in the 1960s. It included the construction of 3 sails made for a sailboat that is currently owned and run by a queer anarchist, radically inclusive sailing collective called Telltales. They named it after the small strips of fabric attached to the sail that tell you which way the wind is blowing. And one of these days, we hope to take these sails and these stories out on their boat and sail into the Gulf to throw a party over where the original ship went down.
Window 4. This is a piece we finished while living in Tulsa as part of the Tulsa Artist Fellowship. It's dedicated to the gay Cherokee playwright Lynn Riggs. If you've ever heard of Lynn Riggs, it is either because you were from northeastern Oklahoma or you were a very committed musical theater buff, because he wrote the play that Oklahoma the Musical was based on. That said, we both went to theater school and neither of us has ever heard his name uttered. The piece is a remake, or maybe more appropriately, a companion piece to an experimental documentary that Riggs made in 1932.
Riggs's film documented a day in the life of his bohemian friends in Santa Fe, where he lived in self-imposed exile from the conservative Oklahoma that he grew up in. Ours, matched shot for shot, documented a day in the life of the vibrant and resilient queer community in northeastern Oklahoma, the northeastern Oklahoma that Riggs had fled a century before. We filmed it in Tahlequah and Claremore and in Tulsa with activists and drag performers from Tahlequah who have since become frequent collaborators of ours. The video is projected through a sculpture of two-way mirror film, referencing an unfinished glass chapel designed by the great gay Oklahoma architect Bruce Goff before he was fired from the University of Oklahoma for being homosexual in 1954, so that the colors and the forms of the film are refracted around the gallery space in shimmering shards of light.
We always roll into a project with a sense of where we're looking and what we're looking for. And we are almost always wrong. We started our Texas piece while we lived in New York full-time, our heads full of images of gay cowboys, red light districts, and border towns. We ended up at a 19th-century lesbian novel and early developments in the field of psychology as a scientific pursuit. We also thought that we'd be able to complete 4 or 5 state projects a year, originally. The thing is, until you're on the ground, you don't actually have any idea what's going on, and it doesn't come real fast. Outside of the time that it takes to understand the landscape of a place, physical, emotional, historical, and otherwise, we constantly try to connect the work we're doing with local LGBTQ communities and the concerns, issues, celebrations, movements, and developments they're facing. That's an even slower process. We think a fair amount about Adrienne Marie Brown's phrasing, moving at the speed of trust. And we spend a lot of time self-evaluating in hopes that our work never becomes extractive. We've been working on our Arkansas piece, and by extension, the piece that we're developing at the Momentary, the Ballads of Jesse, 50 States, Arkansas, for almost 3 years. We expect that it will be at least another year before we've finished it.
Window 6. This is the piece that we made in Colorado. Our first experiment in building community over virtual platforms. Our Colorado piece is a 6-channel video installation that celebrates Charles Frenchy Vosbaugh, an 1880s resident of Trinidad, Colorado, who we would now likely recognize as a trans man. At the end of his life, he wound up in the local Catholic hospital where the Sisters of Charity, who ran the place, figured out real quick that he had been born Catherine and had been living as a man for 60 years. After attempting to force Frenchy to wear dresses, and he was having none of it, and to live in the women's ward, he was having none of it, they made the unprecedented decision to let Frenchy live out the last 2 years of his life as a male orderly, working at the hospital where he was affectionately called Grandpa by the nuns. And then fast forward 70 years, and that same Catholic hospital winds up housing one of the country's pioneering gender affirmation surgery clinics, earning Trinidad the moniker sex change capital of the world.
To celebrate this unsung pioneer and the extraordinary history of Trinidad, we commissioned transgender and gender nonconforming writers and activists in 5 cities: Houston, New York, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and Tahlequah, Oklahoma, to write eulogizing toasts to Frenchy, which they delivered at simultaneous potlucks, each hosted in their own communities. These gatherings were all connected to each other via video conference. We used Zoom, before Zoom was cool, or whatever it is now, that everyone in America is on it. And we were connected with a 6th potluck that the 2 of us hosted in the lobby of the same Catholic hospital in Trinidad, attended by members of the town's queer community. The astonishingly moving and varied toasts are displayed in an immersive 6-channel video installation, and the viewer can listen to the whole evening's proceedings.
Window number 7. What we know about the narrative at the center of our work at the Momentary is precious little. We know that in 1926, a white man named Wellington Stevenson became the president of the Missouri and North Arkansas Railroad and moved with his African-American lover, a man named Jesse, to the small town of Harrison, Arkansas. The two lived together in a converted luxury rail car, car number 99. Jesse was ostensibly a live-in servant, an arrangement unheard of, not only because of its same-sex dynamic and the exceedingly close quarters, but because Harrison, Arkansas had, only 20 years earlier, violently expelled its entire African-American population, becoming one of the region's notorious sundown towns, and later a haven for self-proclaimed white supremacist leaders.
We know that 7 years after moving into their opulent rail car, Stevenson and Jesse were run out of town when the MNNA hit financial turmoil. We know that Stevenson, a confirmed bachelor into his late 50s, returned to Kansas City, where he lived with a wife, a widow with several grown children, in a development with deed restrictions that excluded black residents. We know that Jesse disappears from the historical record. We haven't even found his last name.
Window 8. These are the two stone piers that are all that remain of the MNNA Bridge over the Buffalo National River.
Window 9. This is the water passing by the piers.
Window 10. This is what the number 99 looked like in retirement in Kensett.
Window 11. The piece that got this whole 50-state project started was our Wyoming piece. In 2013, we came across a book by a UC Berkeley archivist named William Benneman called Men in Eden, William Drummond Stewart and Same-Sex Desire in the Rocky Mountain Fur Trade, which chronicled an 1843 pleasure excursion led by a Scottish lord-turned-fur trader and his same-sex lover, the famed and famously handsome hunter Antoine Clement, and 100 most likely same-sex attracted men to a remote lake in the Wind River Range in what is now Wyoming, where they threw a 6-week queer bacchanal replete with wagons of liquor and a trunk of Renaissance costumes. We retraced their 1,200-mile journey from St. Louis to the lake, and along the way, every 60 miles or so, we would stop.
We would take a soil sample, and we would spread it across one of 18 custom-tinted wax panels, each with a different queered image of cowboys, and we would run over it with our truck, recording our pilgrimage across the Continental Divide as a series of embedded tire tracks. We installed these panels along with video of us walking along key points in the journey, like the North Platte River outside of Casper, Wyoming, where that one freezing cold morning we had an epiphany of sorts. We realized that, armed with the knowledge that this ground, in a state that we had always been taught was hostile towards folk like us, had been the stomping grounds nearly 200 years before of liberated gay men, we felt a profound sense of belonging. And we looked at the beautiful, epic Western landscape surrounding us with new eyes. And we decided that morning that we needed to find these histories in every state and make 49 more of these pieces.
Window number 12. 19th-century lesbian novels. Or I should say, 19th-century lesbian novel, singular. In 1895, a medical doctor by the name of John Wesley Carhart, who at this time was living in LaGrange, Texas, wrote and published a hybrid psychology paper / dime store novel entitled Norma Trist or Pure Carbon, a story of the inversion of the sexes. The book contains some of the most astonishingly progressive arguments for the acceptance of homosexuality as an innate orientation, and a handsome Mexican army captain and some stolen treasure, so it's sort of like he was trying to hide his research into same-sex desire inside this other form as an attempt to sneak it by the gatekeepers of the recently emerging field of psychology, who would have been dismayed at Carhart's very progressive arguments about the inherent naturalness of same-sex desire, and his refusal to characterize it as a disordered state. It should be said, it didn't work. Carhart was arrested and later acquitted for obscenity.
Anyhow, when we present the finished installation, we reprint the complete text of the novel in loose stenciled graphite powder that's left open to the elements to degrade over the course of an exhibition as insects land on it, as a wayward finger touches the text, as someone passes a table a little bit too quickly. The impossible task of keeping the print in mint condition will only ever happen if every single viewer decides it's important and chooses to protect it, in a not dissimilar way to the histories at the core of our work. Each chapter is illustrated with an image of what now stands where a gay or lesbian bar used to be in Texas. All but 3 of the bars that we chose are now gone, rapidly on their way to being forgotten.
Window 13. Back to what we're making here in Arkansas. There, in Arkansas. We encountered this story at the heart of the Ballads pretty early in our research, and then we spent a couple of years running away from it. Up until this point, all of our work on early LGBTQ histories had been squarely grounded in the world of facts with a capital F. Stories with paper trails and records and contemporaneous accounts. Early on in the 50 State Project, a journalist named Sam Hudson asked us whether we were making a history or a ballad. We responded a little too quickly and forcefully that we were making a history. If we were going to start making assertions about our LGBTQ forebears, then we needed to be standing on solid footing. And then we encountered Wellington and Jesse, and there was no paper trail. There were only hints and innuendos and coded language, and we weren't sure that we should be moving forward at all.
And this wasn't for lack of trying. We went to archives in 4 different states, driving thousands of miles, talking to everybody who we could talk to over 2 years, and no paper trail. But their story intersects so profoundly with so many strains of Ozarks history. The economic and industrial veins represented by the Missouri and North Arkansas Railroad, the troubled racial history of the region generally and Harrison specifically, all of the questions of privacy and outsiderness and the unknowability of what happened behind closed doors that encompasses so much of queer history. And we couldn't let it go just because it didn't boast the same ink and paper trail of documents that our previous narratives had. And we realized that in focusing all of our energies on histories with a capital H, we were neglecting a profoundly important aspect of our cultural lineage. That in the ballads that Sam Hudson asked us about, there's something as important to understanding a people as in the textbook histories. The ballads and the folklore and the tall tales. Window 14.
We want to start an archive of queer Arkansan folklore. Now, whenever I think of archives, I remember this records room at the Los Animas County Clerk's Office in southern Colorado, where we found in several of those leather-bound volumes that I still can't believe they just let us leaf through, some primary documents that were the first time that we, as amateur historians, truly added to the historical record. We want what we begin to build with this project to come to fruition in a century, with shelves like that, filled with the whole spectrum of queer ballads that were never written, epic and poetic and raunchy and funny and heartbreaking.
Window 15. We had planned on beginning this project of building an archive of these ballads in this residency. We had planned on bringing several queer writers and musicians in for this residency, people whose work that we admire, who have a unique ability to write with great poetry about the human experience, people who could speak to these histories from a perspective that we cannot as two cisgendered white gay men. And we had planned to introduce them to everyone that we've met in Arkansas, and to take them to all of these places so that they too could learn the landscape as well as we know it, and take them out to drag shows in Fayetteville, in Eureka, maybe over into Oklahoma. We had hoped to have several community convenings, getting queer folk from Northwest Arkansas together to talk about their own experiences living here, and to talk about the queer myths and the rumors that they'd always heard, but could never quite be certain had really happened. And we had hoped to organize a symposium of sorts to teach our guests about the amazing work of the Task Force on Race Relations in Harrison, Arkansas.
And so, Window 16, for this virtual residency, we're working with one of those writers, a brilliant singer-songwriter, among many other things, conservatory-trained violist, podcaster, chronicling lesbian history in New Orleans, other things. This wonderful, brilliant singer-songwriter named Free For All, to see how we can translate our research and our experiences to them, and commission the first of these ballads. Here's a video that they put together that will briefly introduce you to them.
You give and you give and you don't even know what you're giving. But you give anyways till it's gone. And when it's gone, you crave and you cling, and you don't even know what you're missing. So you work for what you can't earn, and then you learn So it goes, I suppose. That's just the way of the game. Don't hate the player, hate how they play. They say, don't hate, they say, just play along a while. Lose. Where you lose. You won't even know what you're losing. But you'll lose it all till it's gone. And when it's gone,
Window 17. Maybe this is a glimpse into how we plan on working this week, with the expectation that something will emerge, reveal itself, that will take us in a new direction. Like when we were in Louisiana filming footage for our Louisiana installation, the one with the indigo and the gay ship captains, we got together with Free just to catch up and to have tea, and they introduced us to Jinx Halliday. And when we told Jinx what our project was about, it was revealed that Jinx is part of Telltales, that queer utopian sailing collective, and then suddenly we realized that what we actually needed to do was make sails for their boat, and that the piece should someday be presented on the open seas. Perhaps we will learn this week that rather than taking place in a theater, this piece has to be on the Buffalo National River, delivered in front of the stone piers with the audience in canoes. Or perhaps we will learn that we need to include ballads written by Northwest Arkansans who have a deep knowledge of the place and its history, deeper than we can ever have, never mind what we can transmit to somebody who's never been to Harrison. And perhaps we will learn that it is exactly the viewpoint of an outsider that makes for a truly interesting and complicated ballad. These are the kinds of revelations that can only happen during dedicated development periods. And now, this week, we're going to try to learn how to do this virtually.
Window 18. We haven't told you what happened to the rail car that the pair lived in. It had been bought by a couple of railroad buffs a couple decades back. They were in the process of restoring it to its original glory when an ownership dispute arose and somebody burned it to the ground, ending a storied career that began in 1888 when it was built as a luxury Pullman for the Rocky Mountain Railway and christened the Manitou. Like countless queer records before, journals and photographs thrown into fireplaces, tracks covered by embarrassed family members or discreet confidants or LGBTQ people themselves, the car ended its life as ash. When we learned of the Manitou's fiery end, any remaining concerns about historical paper trails were overtaken by the deep poetic resonance of yet one more burned record. one more lost history, one more rumor or myth, a historical wink. And we knew that the very murkiness, the ambiguity, the haze, was as important as the historical record.
If you tune in on the 4th, you'll see how we're turning that haze into a fictionalized ballad, and maybe how this act of arson and all of the research that we've done over the last 3 years does or doesn't resonate with Free. And what comes when this history, filtered through the memories of the community members who held the knowledge, and then filtered through us as outsiders, passes through yet another filter. Perhaps these many filters, these veils, these curtains over windows, are actually instrumental in the creation of mythology. Maybe they are the foundation of ballads.
And maybe we'll see you in a week. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to when we can meet you, or at least some of you, in person once this moment in our collective public health is lifted.